The house had grown quieter in recent weeks, not the comforting kind of quiet that came after laughter, but the kind that pressed against walls and settled into the cracks of a marriage. Elena sat at the kitchen table, her hands curled around a cold mug of coffee she had no intention of drinking. She told herself it was just exhaustion, just Daniel's workload. But something in the air between them had shifted, something she couldn't name but could feel deep in her bones. She had learned long ago that silence could be heavier than words. Tonight, Daniel's silence felt suffocating. When he finally walked in, his footsteps deliberate. His tie loosened, but his jaw clenched. Elena forced a smile that he didn't bother to return. "Late again," she said softly, her voice barely more than an attempt to touch the surface of his distance. "Work," he replied flatly, tossing his keys onto the counter. No further explanation, no apology. Just the word, heavy and final. The way his eyes avoided hers unsettled her more than the lateness itself. He wasn't angry, not exactly. It was as if he was hiding from something, as though a shadow clung to him that no light could chase away. Elena studied him carefully, the stiff set of his shoulders, the faint tremor in his hands as he reached for a glass of water. She wanted to ask what was wrong, but a voice inside warned her not to. "Not yet," she glanced at the clock. "Nearly midnight. Too late for another harmless excuse. Too early for her to surrender to suspicion." Still, a part of her whispered questions she couldn't silence. Where had he been? Why did he smell faintly of smoke when he had given up cigarettes years ago? He sat opposite her but never really looked at her. His presence was like a locked door, and she was suddenly aware of how long it had been since she felt he was truly home. The unease grew thicker as she stared at him in the dim kitchen light. Elena pressed her lips together, knowing she would have to wait for the cracks in his facade to widen. For now she only had silence, and silence could be deadly. And yet, in his eyes, just for a fleeting second, she caught something that chilled her more than the quiet: fear. The night after their uneasy silence, Daniel lay awake in their bed while Elena pretended to sleep. His body was rigid beside her, his breaths uneven, betraying the storm within. She didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. Every shallow exhale confirmed what she already knew. His silence was not born of exhaustion, but of secrets. In the dark, Daniel's mind replayed fragments he could never confess. The stranger's face in his memories, the decision he had made long ago, one he prayed would stay buried. He squeezed his eyes shut, but the shadows remained, pressing harder, clawing at him from the inside. He feared that if Elena ever saw past the mask, she would never look at him the same way again. By morning, Elena noticed the tension still clinging to him. He sat at the table, staring at his untouched breakfast, 1,000 miles away in thought. She set down her coffee, her voice calm but sharp enough to break his haze. "Daniel, you're not here. Not really. Where do you go when you disappear like this?" His eyes flicked to hers just for a second, then slid away. "You're imagining things." "I'm fine," her heart tightened. "You've said that before, but I can see it in you." "You're hiding something," he snapped, the veneer cracking. "Elena, stop. You read too much into everything. Can't a man be tired without being accused?" The words stung, but what pierced deeper was his tone. Too defensive, too sharp for a simple question. Elena swallowed her response, retreating behind a thin smile. She had learned not to push when he bristled like this, but she was no longer convinced by his excuses. As Daniel left for work, she lingered at the window, watching him walk to his car. He moved quickly, as though distance might free him from whatever haunted him. The way his hand trembled as he unlocked the door did not escape her notice. She turned back to the house, now eerily quiet. If Daniel carried shadows in his eyes, she would find their source. He wasn't the only one who knew how to keep silent. Elena decided that from now on she would watch him more carefully, not with suspicion alone, but with patience. Secrets had a way of revealing themselves to those who waited. Later that night, her eyes fell on the small desk in the corner of their room, a desk Daniel never let her near. For the first time, she wondered what he was hiding inside. The drawer was ordinary in appearance, tucked neatly into the old mahogany desk Daniel claimed as his workspace. But the lock was not. Elena had noticed it before, brushed it off as a quirk. until her suspicions began to bloom in the shadows of his late nights and restless sleep. Now it loomed like a sealed confession. Her eyes traced the small brass keyhole while Daniel showered upstairs. She didn't touch it, not yet, but the knowledge that something was hidden there burned in her mind. What did he need to keep from her, his wife? That week, she began noticing things she could no longer ignore. Daniel erased his call history almost daily. His phone always flipped face down. She caught him whispering into the receiver late at night, his voice strained, ending the call the moment she entered the room. When she questioned him, he smiled too quickly, too easily, and claimed it was just work. "Work doesn't make you erase everything," she murmured once, too quietly for him to hear. One evening he returned smelling faintly of alcohol. Elena froze when the scent hit her, sharp, bitter, undeniable. Daniel had sworn sobriety years ago, claimed he had left that part of himself behind after nearly losing her trust. She didn't mention it immediately, only stored the detail away with the others, a growing collection of cracks in his carefully crafted mask. Later that night, she tried again. "You've been different, Daniel. I can't ignore it anymore." He forced a laugh, though his eyes flickered nervously. "Elena, you worry too much. You always have. I'm fine. We're fine, but fine no longer meant what it used to." The word felt like a barrier, designed to push her away rather than draw her close. The drawer haunted her thoughts in the quiet hours. She imagined what lay inside: papers, photographs, perhaps something darker. She had never known him to keep secrets, and now she wondered if she had ever known him at all. That night, when he finally drifted into an uneasy sleep beside her, Elena sat awake. Her gaze traveled across the room to the locked drawer, gleaming faintly under the thin light of the lamp. Her pulse quickened. Secrets had weight, and whatever Daniel kept hidden was heavy enough to bend their marriage under its strain. She promised herself she would find out what was inside, no matter the cost. The longer Elena stared at the locked drawer, the heavier her silence became. By the fourth evening, she could no longer keep her questions contained. Daniel's late returns, the scent of alcohol, the erased phone calls, all threads of a web she feared she was already trapped in. When he came home past midnight again, his shirt collar damp with sweat, Elena waited in the living room, lights dimmed, hands folded tightly in her lap. "Where were you?" Her tone was calm, almost too calm, but her eyes burned. Daniel stopped mid-step. His pause was brief, calculated. "I told you." "Meetings ran late." "It's always meetings," she said. "But meetings don't explain the smell of whiskey or why you erase every call." For a moment, his expression faltered, but then the mask returned. He gave a soft chuckle, one that carried no warmth. "Elena, do you hear yourself? You're building ghosts out of nothing. I've been stressed, that's all." "You've always been sensitive." Her throat tightened at the word. Sensitive. He wielded it like a blade, slicing her doubts into something irrational, dismissing her intuition as hysteria. "I'm not imagining this," she whispered. "Of course you are," he said firmly, closing the distance to kiss her forehead. "You worry too much. I need you to trust me." The kiss felt like a command rather than affection. His hands lingered on her shoulders, steadying her in a way that made her feel small, fragile, untrustworthy even to herself. When he finally retreated upstairs, Elena remained seated, trembling, torn between love and suspicion. She realized with a clarity that chilled her, Daniel was lying. She couldn't prove it yet, but the truth had already fractured between them. That night, after he fell asleep, Elena pulled out a small leather notebook she had once used for recipes. She opened it to a blank page, her pen hovering, then began to write. Every detail, every inconsistency, every whisper of doubt, she would record it all. If he tried to make her doubt her memory, her words would be her anchor. As ink bled across the paper, she felt a grim sense of resolve. Daniel might twist her perceptions, but he couldn't erase the truth she wrote with her own hand. Outside, the wind rattled the window pane. Elena paused, sensing that the house itself was holding its breath. She didn't know it yet, but the first knock at their door was coming. A knock that would change everything. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, when the world outside felt deceptively ordinary. Elena was in the kitchen folding dish towels when the doorbell rang. The sound was sharp, startling in the stillness. Daniel, lounging in the living room with the newspaper, stiffened instantly. She noticed the way his hand froze mid-turn of the page, as if the chime had struck some hidden nerve. Elena opened the door to find a woman standing there, mid-30s, her expression urgent, her coat buttoned tight despite the mild weather. Her eyes flicked past Elena and landed squarely on Daniel. "Daniel," the woman said, her voice low but steady. Elena felt the air shift behind her. She glanced over her shoulder, just in time to see the color drain from her husband's face. His lips parted, but no sound came. For the briefest moment, he looked like a man who had seen a ghost. "I'm sorry, do we know you?" Elena asked carefully, though her pulse quickened. The woman hesitated, then spoke with quiet certainty. "Yes, he knows me." Daniel was on his feet now, his chair scraping against the hardwood. "This is a mistake," he said quickly, his tone clipped. "You've got the wrong house." But Elena saw it, the tremor in his hand, the tightness in his jaw. His denial rang hollow. The woman's gaze softened, almost pitying before she whispered, "You can't run from it forever." With that, she turned and walked down the porch steps, her heels clicking against the pavement until the sound faded. Elena closed the door slowly, her mind a storm of questions. She turned to Daniel, who was already retreating to the kitchen, muttering under his breath. Who was she? Elena pressed. "No one," he snapped. Confused. "Looking for somebody else." "She knew your name." Daniel slammed his fist against the counter, startling her. "Drop it, Elena. I said it's nothing." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Elena stood rooted in place, staring at the man she thought she knew. For the first time, she felt not only suspicion, but betrayal curling in her chest. When Daniel finally disappeared upstairs, she lingered in the hallway, the echo of the woman's words ringing in her ears. "You can't run from it forever." Elena's journal waited for her on the nightstand. That night, she wrote furiously, determined more than ever to uncover the truth. Elena couldn't shake the woman's voice from her mind. "You can't run from it forever." The words echoed through the halls of their home, louder than any argument she and Daniel had ever had. By the next morning, Elena resolved to look for answers where Daniel had failed to give them. She started small, listening closely when he spoke, noticing how his stories contradicted themselves. One evening, he claimed he had been raised in a quiet suburb with no drama. Yet a week later, he spoke of city nights and trouble with the wrong people. Details didn't align. He rewrote his own past as if it were clay in his hands, molding it depending on what she asked. At dinner, she tested him carefully. "You never talk about your old friends. Do you miss them?" Daniel's fork froze midair. "Friends?" He gave a hollow laugh. "There's nothing to miss. That was a lifetime ago. But you once mentioned someone named Victor. Wasn't he important to you?" His eyes hardened. "I don't remember saying that. You must have misunderstood." The dismissal was too sharp, too defensive. Elena tucked the name away, another piece of the puzzle. Later, when Daniel showered, she ventured to the desk again. The locked drawer stared back, mocking her curiosity. On top of the desk sat a stack of old envelopes, yellowed with time. One bore a postmark from a city Daniel had sworn he'd never lived in. Another contained a faded photograph of a younger Daniel standing beside two men, one of them with a tattoo across his neck. Elena slipped the photo back quickly, her hands shaking. By the time Daniel returned, her face was composed, but her heart thundered. She saw him differently now, not as the husband she had built a life with, but as a man carrying shadows from a world he refused to acknowledge. That night, she wrote in her journal again, "He lies not only about the present, but about who he is. His past isn't gone. It's here, bleeding into our marriage." When Daniel lay beside her, silent and restless, Elena turned toward him in the darkness. For the first time, she wondered if she was sleeping next to a stranger. Her suspicions had sharpened into something colder, certainty. And certainty demanded confrontation. The air between them had grown jagged, every conversation a battlefield laced with unspoken truths. Elena tried to hold her ground, but Daniel's talent for twisting words was suffocating. What she saw with her own eyes, he painted as illusions. What she remembered clearly, he reframed as mistakes of memory. It began with small exchanges. "You erased your calls again," she said one evening. her voice low but steady. "I didn't," Daniel replied without hesitation. "You probably scrolled wrong. Technology confuses you sometimes." The condescension stung more than the denial. Her anger simmered, but she stayed quiet until it boiled over. Days later, she confronted him more directly. "I found an old photo. You with men you claimed you never knew." "Why lie, Daniel?" His jaw clenched. "You're digging where you shouldn't. That picture means nothing. It means you've been hiding from me." "From us," he laughed then, a harsh, bitter sound. "You're spiraling, Elena. Do you even hear yourself? Always suspicious, always looking for monsters in the dark." Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't break. "No, Daniel. I'm seeing clearly for the first time." The argument escalated quickly, words slamming against walls harder than fists. He accused her of paranoia. She accused him of betrayal. He told her she was imagining things. She reminded him of the stranger at the door. His temper flared, his voice rising until it shook the room. "You're destroying this marriage with your obsession," he roared. "You destroyed it the moment you started lying." She shot back. Silence fell after her words, a silence more dangerous than the shouting. Daniel's chest heaved, his eyes narrowed, and in that moment Elena saw the fury he usually kept buried. The mask of the charming husband was gone, replaced by something darker, sharper, more threatening. For the first time, Elena felt fear, not of the secrets he carried, but of what he might do if cornered. She realized the balance of power was shifting. Her defiance had pulled something violent to the surface. That night, when he retreated to his locked drawer, Elena stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. His anger had revealed more than his words ever could. Whatever haunted him was tightening its grip, and now it was bleeding into their home. She knew then. The shadows in Daniel's past weren't staying buried. They were clawing their way back into the present. Daniel's fury lingered in the walls, long after the shouting had stopped. In the days that followed, his anger transformed into something colder, paranoia. He flinched at sudden noises, checked the locks twice before bed, and pulled the curtains closed even in daylight. Elena noticed the way he scanned the street before leaving for work, as if expecting someone to appear. At first, she thought it was guilt gnawing at him, but then fragments slipped through his carefully guarded silence. One night, after tossing restlessly in bed, he muttered words he didn't mean for her to hear. "They'll come back, they always come back." Elena's breath caught. She turned toward him, whispering, "Who, Daniel?" He startled, sitting up. "No one. I was dreaming." But his eyes betrayed him, haunted, wild, carrying the weight of something he couldn't bury. Elena began connecting the pieces. The woman at the door, the old photograph, the city he swore he never lived in. She realized Daniel wasn't just hiding indiscretions or secrets of character. He was running from something darker, something that had teeth. The next evening, she pressed again. "What are you so afraid of?" He stared at her, silent for too long, then said, "You don't understand. Some things should stay in the past." Her heart pounded. "What things?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "If I told you, you'd never forgive me." His words hung in the air like a noose. Elena felt both a chill of dread and a rush of clarity. Her husband was bound to a crime, one that still had the power to destroy them both. From that night onward, she kept her journal closer, writing with a feverish urgency. Each entry was not just suspicion but evidence, a record of the man unraveling beside her. She understood something he didn't. Knowledge was a weapon. If she uncovered the truth completely, she could either protect herself or become his next casualty. As Daniel drifted further into paranoia, Elena sensed the walls of their marriage closing in, and somewhere behind that locked drawer she knew the answer waited. Elena waited until Daniel left for work before she made her move. The locked drawer had taunted her for weeks, the weight of its secrets pressing against her chest every night. With trembling hands, she slid a thin hairpin into the keyhole, her heart pounding with every click. At last, the drawer surrendered with a soft snap. Inside lay what she had both feared and expected, fragments of a past Daniel had sworn never existed. Old newspaper clippings folded with precision, their headlines screaming of a robbery gone wrong. A faded photograph of 3 men, one of them unmistakably Daniel, standing beside a rusted car, And at the bottom, wrapped in a cloth, a gun, its metal dull but heavy, etched with scratches that spoke of use. Elena's breath hitched. This was no ghost of the past. This was evidence damning and undeniable. That evening, when Daniel came home, she stood in the living room with the weapon laid bare on the coffee table. He froze, color draining from his face, his mask splintering in an instant. "Where did you find that?" His voice was low, dangerous. "In the drawer you swore was nothing," she replied, her tone steady, though her body shook. "Tell me the truth, Daniel. What did you do?" He stepped closer, eyes burning with fury. "You shouldn't have touched it. You don't know what you've done." "I know enough," Elena said, her voice cracking under the weight of betrayal. "You were there. You were part of it," his jaw tightened. "It wasn't supposed to happen. Nobody was supposed to die." The confession ripped through the air, leaving them both gasping. Elena staggered back, tears stinging her eyes. "So it's true. You've lied to me, to us, all these years." Daniel's fury erupted, raw and uncontained. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her close, his grip bruising. "You think you can use this against me? You think you're safe now?" Elena wrenched free, her voice sharp as a blade. "I'm not afraid of you anymore. The truth is out, Daniel. You can't bury it." For a moment, they stood locked in silence, the gun lying between them like a predator waiting to strike. The air pulsed with danger. Two lives colliding, love poisoned by revelation, and in that fragile, violent pause, Elena realized the next step would decide which of them survived. The silence between them shattered like glass. Daniel lunged across the room, his hand seizing Elena's arm with a force that made her cry out. The gun still lay on the coffee table, a silent witness to everything unraveling. "You should have left it alone," he roared, his voice raw with desperation. Elena struggled against his grip, her heart pounding in her throat. "You lied to me. You built our marriage on lies, Daniel." His eyes blazed, but beneath the fury was terror. Terror of exposure, of the past clawing its way back into the present. "If you tell anyone, it's over, everything. You don't understand what they'll do if this gets out." Her voice shook, but her resolve did not. "And what about what you've already done?" "You can't silence me, Daniel. Not anymore." His fury deepened. He shoved her backward, sending her crashing into the edge of the table. The gun rattled against the wood, clattering to the floor. Both of their eyes locked on it at once. Elena scrambled, reaching for it, but Daniel was faster. His hand closed around the weapon, trembling, sweat dripping down his temple. He aimed, but his hesitation betrayed him. For the first time, his power faltered. "Don't make me do this," he whispered, his voice breaking. Tears blurred Elena's vision, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. "If you kill me, you'll never escape. My blood will haunt you more than the past ever could." Her words cut deeper than fear. Daniel's hand shook violently, the barrel wavering between them. In that split second of hesitation, fate intervened. Elena lunged forward, grappling with him, the gun twisting between their hands. A deafening crack split the room. Daniel staggered back, eyes wide with shock, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. The gun slipped from his grasp and clattered to the floor. His lips moved as if to speak, but only a broken whisper escaped. Elena stood frozen, chest heaving, as Daniel collapsed onto the hardwood. The smell of gunpowder lingered in the air, heavy and final. The cost of knowing too much was written in blood at her feet. And as the silence returned, thicker, colder, Elena realized her life would never be the same again. The house was no longer silent. It pulsed with chaos, sirens wailing in the distance, hurried footsteps pounding against the porch, radios crackling with clipped orders. Red and blue lights bled through the windows, staining the walls like bruises. Neighbors gathered at the edges of the lawn, their whispers slicing through the night air, trying to piece together what had happened inside the Daniels' home. Elena sat on the floor, her back pressed against the wall, staring at the body that lay only a few feet away. Daniel's eyes, once so guarded, were now fixed and empty. The gun rested where it had fallen, a cold symbol of the truth that could no longer be buried. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" a voice asked. She blinked, looking up at the officer kneeling beside her. "No," she whispered, though her trembling hands betrayed her. "Tell us what happened," he pressed gently. Her mouth opened, but words failed. How could she explain years of lies, the creeping shadows, The stranger at the door, the locked drawer, the revelation that destroyed them both. All she managed was, "It was self-defense." The officer nodded, though his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary. He offered his hand to help her up. She refused it, choosing instead to rise slowly on her own, her body heavy with exhaustion and guilt. Outside, the flashing lights illuminated every crack of the home she once thought safe. Neighbors murmured her name, some in sympathy, others in suspicion. Elena walked past them with her head bowed, clutching her journal close against her chest. Every secret, every suspicion she had written now stood as her only truth. Later, alone in the back of the ambulance, she stared at her reflection in the small window. The woman who looked back at her was unrecognizable, eyes hollow, lips pressed into a line of quiet defiance. Her thoughts drifted to Daniel. Despite everything, she remembered the man he had once pretended to be, the man she had loved. That memory hurt more than the violence itself. As dawn broke, painting the horizon in muted gray, Elena whispered to herself, "Betrayal doesn't kill love. It kills trust, and trust, once gone, leaves nothing but silence." And with those words, the night's chaos faded, leaving only the chilling echo of what trust and truth had cost.